7:43 in the morning. A canine dog suddenly lunged forward and sank its teeth into the pilot's arm right in the middle of the runway. Flight FB-277 was immediately grounded. The entire airport went into red alert. No one had any idea what was going on. The pilot claimed he was innocent. The dog was not out of control, and then they found it. The wristband the pilot was wearing, it was not a fitness tracker. It was a biometric sensor capable of triggering an explosion at an altitude of 30,000 feet, or about 9 to 100 meters. A bomb programmed to detonate by heartbeat. Only one creature noticed it: the dog. Who brought that device on board? And why, at that exact moment, did the dog attack Fieldman Airport? One of the busiest transit hubs on the East Coast was known for its operations, running smoothly down to the second. But that morning at exactly 7:43, the entire air traffic control system entered a Level 1 emergency. Planes preparing for takeoff were forced to come to a halt on runway number 2. The signal lights flipped from green to red in less than 2 seconds. No one understood what was happening until the security monitors replayed the shocking footage. A canine dog suddenly broke formation from the baggage inspection team, accelerated like a bullet, and went straight for the pilot's arm, just as he was stepping onto the aircraft stairs. The pilot collapsed onto the runway. His flight cap flew off and his glasses shattered. Max, the veteran K9, remained in attack stance until the steel leash hooked to his training harness yanked him back. Not a single bark, no standard alert signal. Max's actions left everyone in shock. Security personnel immediately surrounded the scene. Passengers inside the plane stared out the windows, confused about what had just happened. The PA system ordered all flight operations to halt. The control tower switched into internal emergency mode. In just a few short minutes, something that seemed impossible, a dog attacking a pilot in the middle of the runway, had turned the entire airport upside down. By the time the rapid response team reached the site, the pilot was still conscious but clearly shaken. He kept insisting he had done nothing wrong and demanded to proceed with takeoff as scheduled. But Max had already been removed from the team and placed in temporary isolation for behavioral evaluation. As for the pilot, though he only suffered a minor wrist injury, he was held for internal investigation. What puzzled many people was that Max did not appear out of control. His eyes were focused, breathing steady, showing no signs of panic or mental distress. He just stood there, staring at the cockpit door as if waiting for something to happen. Those who had worked with Max knew one thing: he never acted on impulse. And that morning, Max did something that millions of dollars worth of radar systems, biometric scanners, and advanced screening devices had all failed to detect. In just a few more minutes, Flight FB-277 would have taken off with 180 people on board and a secret no one had ever known about. But Max, driven by nothing more than primal instinct, stopped it just in time. And from that moment on, all attention shifted away from the aircraft and turned toward the dog with a frozen stare and blood still clinging to his fangs. At the airport's animal isolation room, right after the incident that rattled the entire security system, a woman entered. She wore a dark combat uniform, her hair tied tightly in a bun. No rank insignia, no name tag. Just her eyes cold, intense, scanning every detail like a pre-programmed sensor. She carried no weapon yet, her presence weighed heavily on the room. Her name was Sergeant Lisa Bray, a veteran K9 handler deployed outside the usual chain of command. Lisa was not there to ask what happened. She came to find out what is being hidden. She had been dispatched to emergency zones at seaports, military bases, and refugee camps, not because of her rank, but because of her instincts. The same instincts that made her jump out of bed, drive through the night, all because of one strange report. K9 service dog attacks pilot cause unknown. To the outside world, it was a disturbing headline, but to Lisa, it was a signal. Like a heartbeat suddenly skipping a beat during surgery, small but potentially deadly. She stepped into the isolation room without waiting for an escort. Every step she took had rhythm, had measured distance like she was moving through a war zone, and in her mind, she always was. Half of Lisa still lived in the red zones on the map places, where explosions came without warning, and the smallest mistake could cost a life. That is why she never ignored a single sign, not even a strange glance from a dog that was supposed to be retired. In the world of airport security, Lisa was real, but almost no one had met her. Not because she avoided attention, but because she only showed up when something too serious for standard protocol needed to be handled. Every time she stepped in, a quiet investigation began. And this time, the one she needed to speak to was Max. She knelt down face to face with Max behind the glass. No commands, no head pats. Just eye contact, direct, deep, and waiting. Max did not bark. He did not growl, but he also did not lower his head. His eyes remained locked on the wristband sitting on the examination table, the seemingly harmless object that had triggered the entire chaos that morning. Lisa did not need to smell it or touch it. One look at Max was enough. Over all her years training K9s, she had seen countless strange reactions, but rarely had she encountered a look like this. It was not the expression of a dog that had made a mistake. It was the stare of a soldier forced into silence, while their teammate faced danger. He did not want forgiveness. He needed to be trusted. Lisa let out a soft breath, stood up, and her gaze shifted. She was no longer an observer. She was now the one taking action. And in her mind, an investigation had already begun, without orders, without approval. Once again, instinct took over. And once again, she put her faith in it. In Max. Max, the dog Lisa was now focused on, was not a typical service animal. He was a combat dog, literally. A battlefield K9 selected from a special federal defense program that only admitted individuals with extremely sharp biological reflexes and high intelligence. With Max, it was not just loyalty, it was razor-sharp perception. He did not wait for commands. He could sense threats through microscopic biological changes in the air, from ultra-fine chemical odors to shifts in human skin microbiomes. Experts called it molecular-level biological scenting. Lisa had a simpler name for it: survival instinct. From the moment Max was assigned to Lisa, he had been the front line of every high-risk screening at the airport, the kind of cases where scanners, imaging systems, and even biometric radars all came back clean. Only Max could detect something. And he had never been wrong. Lisa understood him better than anyone. 6 years together, no errors, no hesitation, no strange behavior. He did not bark aimlessly. He did not react on ordinary instinct. Every movement, every glance Max made had a reason. A reason that sometimes would take hours for humans to figure out. But by then, Max had already acted. That is why, when Max attacked the pilot this morning, without barking, just lunging and locking onto his wrist, Lisa did not see it as a mistake. She only knew one thing: Max had sensed something the machines could not. And those eyes? They had never left the wristband. Lisa did not need an explanation, because all these years Max had never needed to say a word. He only needed to be believed. Lisa returned to the surveillance room. She needed to review every detail from that morning, and the first person she had to look into was the pilot Max had attacked. Logan Pierce, the name popped up after just a few clicks, and it made her pause. Not because he had a bad record, quite the opposite, it was too clean. Logan was a former combat pilot who had served in the Federal Air Force. After 9 years of service, he transitioned into civil aviation for classified domestic routes the kind of flights not publicly listed due to their role in transporting high-level technical documents. What caught Lisa's attention most, Logan had only been assigned to this morning's flight at the last minute, replacing another pilot who had been rushed to the hospital after an unexpected spike in blood pressure just before takeoff. A sudden substitution for a flight that almost no one noticed. And yet Max, the seasoned K9, reacted as if Logan was carrying something extremely dangerous. Reviewing the security footage, Lisa watched as Logan stepped through the checkpoint left hand, holding his flight cap right hand, wearing a protective glove when Max suddenly tightened his leash, slipped through two barriers, and lunged. He did not bark. He did not aim for the body. He went straight for the left wrist where a silver-gray band was strapped. One strong swipe, and the band flew off. The entire monitoring zone erupted in chaos. Lisa might have leaned toward the idea that Max had overreacted if it were not for what happened next. His eyes remained fixed on the wristband, lying on the ground, as if that object, not the man, had been the real target. Lisa bent down to check Max. There was a small scratch on his front paw, and the sharp edge of the wristband seemed to be what caused the injury. But Max paid no attention to himself. His gaze stayed locked on the wristband. No barking, no whining, no movement. Just waiting for someone to understand. Back in the security data feed, Lisa zoomed in on the wristband Logan had been wearing. No logo, no serial number, just a plain silver-gray band similar to muscle training gear. During a quick interrogation, Logan claimed someone from the airport's technical crew asked me to wear it to monitor heart rate, part of a temporary protocol for replacement pilots. Lisa immediately requested verification of that technician's identity, but the surveillance footage revealed a completely unfamiliar face, someone not listed in any official employee registry. The person wore a mask, a protective helmet, and disappeared from the operations area right after Logan walked away. No alarms had gone off. No one was hurt. And yet a dog had stopped the entire protocol. And the person Max attacked in a highly unusual manner just happened to be the most crucial link in what seemed to be a routine flight. Lisa sat silently for a few seconds, eyes focused on the biometric data just extracted from the wristband. She did not blink. Not because she had found something specific, but because every reading was too perfect. No temperature fluctuation, no biochemical changes throughout 3 minutes of data extraction. That only happens when a device is operating under a perfect masking mode. And that was not a function of a typical fitness tracker. She quietly picked up the wristband, sealed it inside an evidence bag, and exited the tech room through the emergency corridor. A chilling hypothesis took shape in her mind. The device was not recording biometrics. It was hiding something. And Max, the seasoned dog, had sensed it first in a way no one could have predicted. In the old lab on basement level, B2, once a special K9 training center, only a few covert systems remained operational. Lisa connected the data cable to the multi-layer analyzer, slipped on lead-lined gloves, and activated the infrared scanning layer. Just as she suspected, the outer fabric showed nothing unusual. But between the second and third layers, a synthetic fiber core appeared containing a strange metallic compound, arranged in a twisted coil like a wire. She increased the magnetic sensitivity scale. The readings spiked. The metal contained a niobium isotope, highly reactive to rapid changes in air pressure at high altitudes. Simultaneously, a microscopic chip at one end of the band lit up, encased in a gray gel nearly invisible to the naked eye. Lisa froze. None of this had anything to do with health monitoring. When subjected to pressure simulation, the display triggered a tick, a chemical reaction chain initiated when air pressure dropped below a preset threshold, the pressure at altitudes above 30,000 feet, or about 900 meters. An altitude-triggered device, a pressure sensor switch, a disguised detonator. Lisa could hardly believe her eyes. In nearly 15 years of service, she had seen explosive devices disguised as watches, pens, even dental implants. But never had she seen a wristband concealing a pressure-sensitive mechanism this sophisticated. No remote control, no radio signal. All it needed was to be worn, taken aboard, and ascend to the preset altitude. Then it would activate automatically. She reopened the layout of the FB-277 cargo hold and cabin. If Logan sat in the assigned position between the cockpit and the central electronics module, and the device detonated at that height, it would not just kill Logan. It could blow out the flight control systems, causing the aircraft to lose balance mid-air. And, at that altitude, there would be no way to save the 180 people on board. Lisa clenched her fist. Who was the masked, helmeted person who handed Logan the wristband, and why him assigned at the very last minute? Could this last-minute switch have been anything but random? Was it in fact the final move in a precisely calculated plan? She accessed the pilot reassignment logs in the airport system. The originally scheduled pilot, Captain Harrow, had reportedly suffered a sudden spike in blood pressure right before departure. An emergency call, a signature from an airport physician. But oddly, Harrow's medical file was locked. Lisa narrowed her eyes. This was no longer a routine security breach. This was a planned substitution, and the wristband was just the visible tip. She glanced back at Max, still lying silently near the doorway. "You were right again," she whispered. And maybe, if we had been just a few minutes late, there would have been no turning back. Lisa did not return to her office. Instead, she turned right, heading deeper into the tunnel that led to Storage D14, an old maintenance zone sealed off after a failed test in 2017. For most current staff, it was just a junkyard for broken equipment. But for her, and a few who had served in the Strategic Response Unit, it was the only place quiet and isolated enough to trace something beyond ordinary understanding. The heavy door groaned as Lisa scanned her biometric ID. Inside it was pitch black, lit only by a faint motion sensor light from the corner. She placed the sealed bag on a steel table, put on anti-static gloves, and activated a deep-layer decryption tool, the same one once used to analyze bomb fragments from conflict zones. The first data revealed made Lisa pause for several seconds. The device core contained a temporary ID code, formatted in symbols not found in any U.S. military or civilian database. She tried cross-referencing with international surveillance systems, no match. That left only two possibilities. Either the technology came from a nation not yet known to global intelligence, or worse, it was the product of an independent black network operating outside all government control. She continued decoding the system architecture. The programming used an ancient assembly code interwoven with biological behavior algorithms, like reflexive programs. That meant the device did not just trigger at a certain altitude. It could sense the wearer's condition. If the person was panicked or unnaturally calm, it would delay activation until it reached a stable state. This behavior pattern was only seen in fifth-generation AI sensor chips, and, according to international records, such tech had never been deployed for sabotage. Lisa furrowed her brow. This confirmed one thing: the wristband was not a crude explosive. It was a fully programmed mechanism engineered to adapt its behavior and select the optimal moment. And based on Logan's seat location right next to the electronic power distribution unit, that optimal moment would be when the aircraft's full power load stabilized at cruising altitude. She quietly documented everything, resealed the wristband, and sent an encrypted data dump to a single internal email belonging to an old colleague who had left the unit after a classified mission in East Asia. No one else had ever worked with tech like this. The sound of Max's paw gently tapping the metal floor startled Lisa. The dog had followed her in without her noticing. and now lay quietly in the corner eyes, still fixed on the wristband bag. "You still feel something, do not you?" Lisa murmured. Max did not bark. He blinked once. Lisa looked at her watch. Only 42 minutes remained until FB-277's departure, this time with a new pilot and no suspicious equipment. But the more urgent question still hung in the air: who arranged for that wristband to be placed on Logan? Who ensured Captain Harrow backed out at the exact moment? And what was the real objective? Simple sabotage or a trial run for a chain reaction using civilian tech? She pulled out her phone and dialed the emergency line of Agent Beck, the only person left with clearance to access the third-floor corridor surveillance archives. "Beck, I need you to pull camera footage from the maintenance corridor exactly at 5:17 this morning. Did anyone approach Logan before he got his orders?" There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. Then Beck spoke a sentence that made Lisa tighten her grip. "Yes, a woman, masked and wearing dark glasses, facial scan unreadable. She bypassed all security checkpoints." Lisa looked at Max almost like she had expected it. This time, they were not just dealing with a planted device. This was an organization with enough power to manipulate national-level security procedures. And what had just happened might only be the first test run in a far bigger plan. She held the phone for one more second, then hung up. Lisa could not let this information leak through standard channels. Every call, every recording could be monitored if the organization behind this had infiltrated that deeply. She needed to confirm something immediately. She reopened the file of Captain Harrow, the pilot originally assigned to Flight FB-27B7. In the electronic medical record, the last note read, "Sudden hypertension episode needs 48 hours of rest." But what caught Lisa's attention was not the diagnosis, it was the signature Dr. Melissa Kern, cardiologist and former medical officer for the Air Force's Special Personnel Projects. Melissa had resigned last year. Lisa frowned. A doctor who had left her post could not have signed a medical approval this morning. That meant the signature was forged, and if Harrow's withdrawal was fabricated, then someone had set up this entire scenario in advance, including the seemingly random assignment of a replacement pilot. Max shifted slightly. Lisa turned to see the dog standing up, ears perked, eyes fixed on the door of storage D14, like he sensed something. She moved quietly, unlatched the safety on her sidearm inside her coat. No strange sounds. But with Max, silence was often the loudest warning of danger. Her phone vibrated. A message popped up encrypted from the same address where she had just sent the device data. "Do not trust the system. You are being watched. Leave D14 now." Lisa did not hesitate. She grabbed every sample, memorized the data, and powered down all electronics. She signaled for Max to run ahead, then shut the storage room door behind her like nothing had happened. As she walked down the long, narrow corridor back toward the administrative area, she noticed a ceiling camera in the far left corner, one that was supposedly disabled in 2021. Its green light blinked softly. They had reactivated surveillance in the lockdown zone. Lisa lowered her head and quickened her pace. She knew what would happen if she stayed too long. She would be summoned to security, interrogated, and every piece of evidence would vanish without a trace. The group behind this had been in control for long enough, but they had not expected a K9 to disrupt their perfect logic. Just outside the D14 wing, Lisa saw Beck waiting. No uniform, no words. Just a glance, and then he turned and walked away. She followed. They took the north stairwell, an area where GPS signals could not be accurately tracked. As the steel door closed behind them, Beck finally spoke. "Harrow is not sick. He is being held inside the airport." The detainment order was signed with a priority level A code bypassing standard medical protocols. Lisa froze. Who has the authority to do that? Beck here of all places. He looked at her eyes heavy with meaning. We used to suspect a special group operating outside the system, but we never had proof. Now we do. And the wristband? It was just bait. Max growled softly, backing up a step. Footsteps echoed from the upper hallway. Beck pulled his ID card, scanned the lower-level steel door, and motioned, "Go." Now. They know we are here. Lisa followed, heart pounding. Her old tactical instincts flared back to life like a dry spark to flame. She did not know what was waiting ahead, but she knew one thing for certain. If they did not get out in time, they would not just lose the trail. They would be wiped from the entire investigation's living record. Max moved first, gliding like a shadow through the narrow corridor. And in a fleeting moment, Lisa realized this fight was no longer about a device. It was a battle between two systems, one built to control every layer of security, and the other built to sniff out the truth. The door at the end of the stairwell opened into a cold, narrow hallway that led directly to the abandoned lower tech floor, once a storage area for light military gear. Beck motioned for Lisa to stay quiet. Max led the way, ears, sharp nose, close to the floor, as if even dust particles could hold secrets. There is a tunnel that connects to the auxiliary control center beneath Terminal C, Beck whispered. I checked it earlier. No cameras, but if they know, we might have just minutes. Lisa nodded, asking nothing. Every sign confirmed that she and Beck were being watched. The people behind this plan had power preparation time insider access and an operational network that functioned nearly parallel to the government. They left no traces, no arrest warrants, no names. But now one mistake, and both she and Beck would become targets for elimination. The three of them moved quickly through the tight underground paths, light from the small barrel-mounted flashlight sweeping over every square foot of wall. Lisa felt like she was back in East Asia, where one wrong footstep at the wrong time could mean a bullet between the eyes. At the final turn, Beck stopped, pulling a mechanical key from his belt, the kind used on emergency locks dating back to the 1990s. He turned, it pulled back a heavy steel panel. Behind it was a ladder leading down into an auxiliary power room, and below that, according to him, an exit that led directly to the electric vehicle maintenance lot. We will leave as maintenance crew, Beck whispered. I left 2 uniforms in storage, but we have to be fast. If your GPS is still active, they will find us in under 10 minutes. Lisa did not ask how he knew. She just nodded and climbed down. At the bottom, the flickering light from an old fluorescent tube buzzed dimly overhead. The air was thick with the smell of burnt circuitry and oil. Beck pulled out 2 technician outfits, handed one to Lisa. They changed on the spot, stashed their weapons inside toolkits, and removed the batteries from their phones. Lisa tied a bright orange safety leash to Max, disguising him as a technical inspection dog. The final exit door opened into the west lot. Everything looked prearranged. A small, unmarked utility vehicle sat quietly beneath the shadow of a service awning. Beck drove. Lisa sat in the back with Max. They passed through the tech checkpoint with a temp badge, scanned and cleared like nothing was unusual. Only after they had driven more than a mile outside airport grounds did Lisa speak. Who gave you the intel about Harrow's detainment? Beck kept his eyes on the road. A source who once worked in strategic intelligence. She disappeared in 2022. But yesterday I received a file with no sender. Inside were copies of Harrow's hold order and a duplicate of a biodevice intervention report from a program that was declassified years ago. Lisa's spine chilled. That program, codenamed THETA 9, had once been run by a special unit under the Department of Defense, tasked with testing interactions between biotech and high-pressure flight environments. It had been suspended after an incident in Colorado where 2 pilots lost control and died during a trial. You mean? The wristband was not the first version. Beck nodded. Not only was it not the first, it may be the most advanced. And the scariest part, it does not need remote activation. It knows when to explode based on biological and environmental data. Lisa looked out the window where city lights slowly rose in the distance. For a brief second, she thought about Max, about that single bark earlier that morning. Just one sound, but it had saved hundreds of lives. And now they were heading into an investigation not just of an attempted assassination, but of the existence of a covert program, one that weaponized biometric sensing as a precision tool. She clenched her fists. The game had begun. And this time, no one could sit on the sidelines. In that fleeting moment, everything she had once believed about national security felt unsteady. She exhaled, then turned to Beck. If that band could evaluate its surroundings to determine the detonation point, then who decided that flight had to be destroyed? Why FB-27B7? Beck did not respond right away. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, waiting until they passed through a dark intersection before he spoke. Do you remember the Convergent Payload Program? The original goal was to develop a high-speed biometric data transmission protocol through low-pressure environments. Lisa nodded. It was shut down due to neural data leakage risks. Not just that, a side branch of it called THETA 9. 3 was transferred to a private contractor specializing in behavioral artificial intelligence. They created a biometric device that could learn habits programmed by emotional rhythm and execute destructive decisions if it detected specific brain signals in the user. Lisa's voice dropped. You are saying? Exactly. That wristband is not just a biometric reader, it was programmed to analyze and respond. And if the wearer, the pilot, is forced into actions outside their original cognitive pattern, the device would trigger what they called zero protocol. And zero protocol means? She asked instinctively. Beck turned toward, her eyes darkened. Termination without human authorization. A heavy silence filled the car. They passed the edge of an abandoned factory zone on the city's east side. Max remained quiet, but his ears were still alert, as if sensing the tension inside the vehicle. Lisa laced her fingers, trying to suppress a shiver. So the scenario is this. Someone planted the device on the backup pilot. He thought he was just filling in for Harrow, but in reality they needed someone unaware, unresistant, easier to trigger the device. And if he followed standard flight procedures, once the plane reached cruising altitude, it would detonate. Exactly. And worse, Beck said slowly, the flight data for FB-277 altitude, humidity, speed, it almost perfectly matched a simulation uploaded to the system. Last year. You see it now, it was all designed in advance. Lisa stiffened. So the pilot was not the target. The entire flight was. And according to the passenger manifest, Beck added there were 2 key individuals on board, a physicist researching nanoscale sensors and a software engineer formerly with the THETA project, a dual-use deep AI platform. Lisa whispered, dual-use, military and civilian. Beck nodded. And if those 2 exchanged any information about the device, the technology, or anything related, that organization would not allow it. Lisa leaned back. The pieces were clicking together chillingly perfectly. Harrow was not ill. He was removed because he asked too many questions. His replacement was slotted in like a biological fuse, and the device had been programmed to activate not due to technical error, but because of a predefined sociological scenario, elimination, erasure, and cover-up. So now, she said softly, if the device did not detonate, what will they do? Beck's grip on the wheel tightened. Begin Phase 2. Erase those who know too much. And Lisa, we are at the top of that list. Lisa nodded. But this time we have something they do not. Beck raised an eyebrow. What's that? She looked at Max, then stared forward. A dog who cannot lie, but always knows when the truth is being buried. Under the scattered glow of streetlights in the outskirts of the airport, the utility vehicle blended into civilian traffic unnoticed. Lisa rested her hand on Max's head. The dog remained alert even though the environment was now safe. Beck drove in silence, but both their minds circled around one name, Harrow. We need to talk to him. Now. Before they get to him first, Lisa said. Beck nodded, though his eyes never left the rearview mirror. Where is he? Beck tapped a secure satellite-linked screen. I picked up a trace tied to a biometric fingerprint code Harrow once registered into THETA 9's internal system. It's been wiped, but traces remain on the darknet. You know how to access it, I do. But we'll need their hardware to open the gateway. Lisa understood. They had to reach the biocyber black market, a place where banned tech like neural implants, DNA modulators, and military-grade bioemulators were up for sale if you had the right codes and were not afraid to die. Buried deep beneath the abandoned West Subway line, once used as an industrial waste depot, the black market did not resemble any place Lisa had ever seen. Sellers wore gas masks. Buyers transmitted intent via chips embedded under their skin. No voices, only heartbeats and EEG signals determined whether you were trusted. Beck handed Lisa an encoded signal ring, an old field device recovered from a Syrian war zone. It could simulate the vitals of someone already dead. Use this. You'll pose as a tech from Phase Z, a THETA 9 offshoot. That's the key to get them to show you the inventory. Lisa did not ask how he got the gear. She slipped it on, stabilized her heart rate, and stepped into a world where life, death, and identity no longer had moral definitions. After clearing multiple encryption layers, they finally accessed classified schematics of an upgraded wearable bio device, the latest model, codenamed Genesis 2. Even more chilling, the attached file showed its last activity timestamp on board Flight FB27, the exact moment Max barked. The device had begun automatically analyzing passenger heart rates, searching for the peak of psychological instability. Without intervention, it would have detonated once a passenger reached critical panic, turning human emotion into a live detonation trigger. Beck and Lisa exited the black market through a side passage, an old ventilation tunnel once used as a wartime emergency escape route. No one followed. Max moved ahead, each step as silent as steel breathing. When they reached the surface, night had fallen. Only a few lights still flickered across the ruins of the old industrial zone. Beck retrieved a small truck he had stashed behind a container lot. Lisa did not need to ask. This journey was not just a getaway. They were now chasing a trail that had been thoroughly wiped clean. And the key was Harrow. I found a lead, Beck said as he drove. A bioscanner at the market pinged a match with Harrow's trace, not at the airport, but at an abandoned medical facility near Dorian Air Base. Lisa pulled up the map. Dorian Base had been shut down in 2014 after a chemical leak, but in intel circles it was rumored to be the logistics hub for buried programs. The coincidence was too dangerous to ignore. After more than an hour of driving, they arrived. Max reacted instantly. His ears shot up. Fur bristled. The air was thick, almost electric. Lisa moved slowly toward the back door of the facility, its faded danger, do not enter sign, torn and unreadable. She pushed the door. Its hinges groaned like a scream from the underworld. Inside it was pitch black. They switched on infrared lights and moved in close formation. In the basement, old machinery still pulsed faint vibrations. Lisa's breath hitched. This place was never abandoned. Just then, metal clashed in the hallway to the left. Max darted forward like a bullet. Lisa and Beck drew their weapons and followed. At the end of the hall was a door locked by biometric ID. "I need your blood," Lisa whispered. Beck nodded, sliced his hand, and smeared blood onto the sensor. The door slid open. Inside, under a weak yellow light, lay a man strapped to IV lines and neural monitors. It was Harrow. He was alive, but his eyes were dull pupils constricted. Lisa checked his pulse. They're sedating him with consciousness inhibitors. His nervous system's been programmed not to respond to external stimuli, but it's reversible with the right detox. Beck connected a scanner to Harrow's wrist. A stream of biological data flashed across the screen, including the Genesis protocol string identical to the one embedded in the wristband. Lisa's face drained of color. They didn't just want to blow up the plane. They used Harrow as a live prototype to measure reactions, spread patterns, so when the real flight came, they would know the exact optimal conditions. So FB-277 was not the destination. It was the template. To create more, mass-produced, synchronized, and invisible. Lisa clenched her fists. "We need to get Harrow out. Now. If he wakes up, he's the only living proof they haven't erased." Sirens echoed in the distance. Max let out a low, haunting howl as if warning of an incoming net. "Move," Beck snapped. "This time we either strip the last mask or never get another chance." The three of them burst through the narrow hallway, wheeling Harrow's gurney. Lisa kept her gun close, eyes darting to every shadow. Max ran beside them, no commands needed. He knew. This was no longer an escape. This was the first strike for the truth. Under the old administration wing, a side door opened into a Cold War-era escape tunnel, sealed off for decades. But Beck, like he had prepared for this day long ago, pulled out a root key, plugged it into the panel. A dry click and the steel door rotated open, revealing a tunnel leading to the old ambulance lot. Lisa said nothing. She knew what Beck had sacrificed to get this key, and she knew if they failed now, no one in the government would ever listen again. Outside, a light rain had begun to fall. The night in Los Angeles was cold and wet, city lights blurred by mist. Lisa climbed into the vehicle with Beck and Harrow. Max sat upright in the passenger seat posture, rigid like a battle-worn bodyguard. Their destination, a mobile lab operated by an independent counterintel group where they had first analyzed the wristband. As they sped past an old checkpoint, Lisa received a decrypted file sent from Harrow before he vanished. It contained an excerpt from a private security strategy council meeting an underground alliance between defense contractors and biotech firms. The name Logan Pierce was mentioned no fewer than 7 times. But what made Lisa's skin crawl was the final sentence in the recording. "He thinks telling the truth is enough. At that time, at that altitude, the band will activate. If Pierce is not in the pilot's seat, we cannot execute and keep the file clean. We cannot let a clean man turn traitor." Beck slammed his hand on the dashboard. "So, it's his integrity, his lack of involvement, his clean record that made him a threat." Lisa leaned back. They needed a perfect death. A technical accident no one would question. A victim without a stain. To create media impact, grief mourning, but no suspicion. And with that, Beck continued, every internal report Pierce was about to expose becomes classified material, sealed in an aviation security incident that will never be closed. Lisa understood. They were not just killing people, they were programming the narrative, turning truth into something no one was allowed to reach. The van pulled into the lab's private garage. Max jumped out first, growling softly. Harrow began to stir. Beck and Lisa hauled him inside, administered the neural inhibitor antidote. A few minutes later, Harrow sat upright, pale and drenched in cold sweat. "Thank you for not leaving me behind," he whispered. Lisa placed a firm hand on Harrow's shoulder. "We need you sharp. Right now is the moment to break the programming chain, and you're the only one with access clearance to the flight route control system. Harrow-knotted eyes locked onto the large screen where a flight simulation of FB-277 was running. Then he pointed to a small, nearly invisible data point. There, preset flight ceiling 37,400 feet, or about 11,400 meters. If the aircraft hits that altitude exactly at 12:35 and 8 seconds, the detonation signal is triggered, but only if 3 conditions happen at once: time, air pressure, and Pierce's heart rate signal. Beck froze. So the band is not just a trigger, it's a biological switch. It checks for Pierce's presence to confirm the target before activation. Lisa exhaled, and if anyone else is there, it disables itself. Now, everything was clear. Logan Pierce was never a random target. He was the linchpin, a programmed accident designed to bury the truth. His death would seal the entire conspiracy under the perfect lie, and they had less than 5 hours to stop the flight from taking off. Lisa clenched her fists, eyes locked on the digital map in front of her. She and Beck sat in a makeshift control booth, set up in the basement of an old operations building, just one soundproof wall away from the airport's central command. Max lay flat on the floor beneath them, ears perked occasionally, letting out a low growl as if he too understood that every second now meant life or death. "We've got exactly 6 minutes before Pierce passes the final checkpoint," Beck said, fingers flying across an unauthorized interface linked into the airport's internal routing system. Once he enters the special clearance zone, all access gets shut. All flight paths, passenger data, and biometric streams go into high-level encryption. Lisa said nothing. She handed him a small hard drive. "This contains Pierce's identity hash. If we inject it into the ground control system, we can create a biometric conflict enough to delay the boarding process by 3 to 5 minutes. Beck let out a dry laugh. "That's all we need for the third response team to reach him." Lisa nodded. She knew the plan was far from perfect, but right now they had no choice. Because in just a few more minutes, if Pierce boarded FB-277 as scheduled, the world would witness another horrifying technical accident, and his death would be neatly justified by a list of fake causes, pressure failure, cockpit error, or worse, a mid-air suicide. But the most terrifying part was this: Pierce was the last person, the only person who still held an original copy of the THETA 9 data, along with the full testimony of Dr. Melissa Kern, who had faked her death 2 years ago and recently reached out again through Beck's private encrypted channel. Max whined softly. Lisa knew that sound. It was a warning. Someone was approaching. Beck immediately drew his weapon and signaled Lisa to hide behind the console as he quickly shut down the intrusion interface. A faint click, the side door creaked open. A young technician walked in, carrying a toolbox. Beck rushed him, gun to the back of his neck. "Who do you work for?" Beck growled. The technician panicked, raising his hands. I was just told to check the auxiliary network systems, routine maintenance." Lisa stepped out. "Your security badge is fake. According to the system code 2479Z was deactivated last week. Who are you really?" I'm not anyone. I was cleared temporarily by a security officer named Douglas." Lisa and Beck exchanged a look. Douglas, a senior airport security agent with the Rapid Response Team. He was also the one who had escorted Pierce earlier in the private waiting area. It hit them immediately. The assassination attempt was not waiting for Pierce to board the plane. It had already started inside the airport. There was no time to waste. Lisa plugged directly into the core database, the one storing passenger biometrics. She input Pierce's ID and triggered a temporary identification mismatch in the retinal scan system, causing the checkpoint scanner to flag him as a match to a previously rejected traveler flagged for suspected terrorism. Simultaneously, Beck injected a false security drill alert into the internal communication channel, locking down Gate G for at least 10 minutes. The emergency siren blared just as Pierce was approaching the checkpoint. The screen flashed, "Passenger Logan Pierce. Biometric ID requires re-verification. Please proceed to the secondary screening lane." Beck let out a breath. "We just bought a few more minutes, and now Lisa checked her watch. We have to beat the hit squad there." Max bolted ahead as if reading their urgency. They left the control room, cutting through a back corridor that connected to the VIP screening area where Pierce was being held for verification. Every step was a gamble, every second a choice between survival and failure. The VIP corridor was eerily quiet. Lisa and Beck closed in on the biometric screening booth. Pierce stood there, looking confused. A plainclothes security officer hovered near him, clearly not part of the listed staff. He was tall, bulked up like a special forces agent in disguise, but his overly casual posture gave him away. He was waiting for the right moment to strike. Max stopped dead in his tracks, fur bristling. Lisa gave a small nod. Beck moved to the end of the hallway, pretending to inspect a wall panel, finger on the trigger. Lisa charged forward. "Logan Pierce, you're being misidentified. I need you to come with me right now." "Who are you?" Pierce stepped back, startled. I'm following their instructions. There are no they here." Beck snapped, stepping in from behind and slamming the fake officer into the wall gun, drawn and steady. "This guy is not legitimate. Internal security has been breached. If you stay put, you will die, and they'll label it a passenger incident gone wrong." Lisa yanked Pierce's arm. "Come with me if you want to live, and if you still want to tell the real story." Max took the lead, weaving through the growing chaos around Gate G as the false security drill echoed through the terminal. They moved with the panic hidden in the surge of confusion. But just as they passed through the internal fire exit, two figures emerged from the shadows, firing a barrage of shots in Beck's direction. He dove, dragging Pierce down. Lisa returned fire. Max leapt like a missile, clamping down on one of the attacker's arms, forcing a scream from the man. Bullets ricocheted off the walls. A sharp cry rang out as Beck shot the second man square in the knee, taking him down. "We need to get out of this zone now," Beck said, pulling Pierce up. "There's at least one more team coming in from the east gate." All four of them, Max included, raced through the hallway behind the lounge, slipping into a restricted tech staff room. Beck locked the door and activated a handheld signal jammer, blocking all comms within a 100-meter radius. Pierce still looked dazed, chest heaving. "Start talking," he said, voice shaking, hands trembling. "What the hell is going on?" Lisa sat across from him, voice low and firm. "Do you know why someone wants you dead?" Pierce slowly shook his head. Lisa held out the data file from Beck's hard drive. "It is not about money. It is not about power. It is about something you are carrying, something you do not even know you are carrying." Beck powered up the mini projector. A series of files appeared, including Pierce's profile, travel logs, medical history, and a file labeled THETA 9, Relay Config PCR. "Do you remember your last routine health check?" Lisa asked. "Just a quick medical screening, 20 minutes at the clinic." Pierce nodded. "That was when they implanted a microbio device in your body. They told you it was a blood pressure sensor, but in reality it was an upgraded version of THETA 9. It was designed to function as a smart biological detonator. It uses your own internal metrics, heart rate, adrenaline levels, to determine the optimal moment and turn you into a living trigger. If you board that flight, sit in that seat at that exact time with the correct pressure and lighting conditions, Cabin A will explode, leaving no trace." Pierce went pale. "I thought..." THETA 9 was shut down. The press said. Lisa cut him off. "The press only writes what they are allowed to. You are the final link. Clean, intelligent, scandal-free. The perfect role model. If you die in a plane crash, no one will ask questions, and the people behind this will use the explosion to redirect public attention. Beck added his voice low. And worse, if you die on that plane, they will spin the entire thing as an internal attack, blaming a cyber-terrorist cell. That way the government will expand its control over personal data, and no one will object. 2 birds, 1 stone. Pierce clutched his head. His body trembled, sweat forming along his brow. I am just a pilot. I was told to fill in at the last minute. I thought it was just a scheduling issue. I had no idea I was being used as a human bomb. Lisa looked at him, her gaze both sharp and deeply human. Well, now you do. And the question is, what do you want to do with that truth? Pierce looked up, still shaken, but this time a trace of resolve entered his voice. I do not know what to do, but if it helps bring them into the light, I will not step back. If stepping onto that plane means 180 people will die, he said, then I will not let that happen, even if it costs me everything. Lisa nodded. Then we have less than 40 minutes before flight FB-277 begins boarding. Beck quickly outlined the plan. We split into 2 teams. Pierce and I will infiltrate as tarmac tech crew. Our goal is to access the cockpit. Lisa and Max, you need to reach the ground control center. Override the routine radar sync and disable the pilot biometric confirmation. If not the moment Pierce scans in, the device will activate. Pierce breathed heavily. It could explode at the gate. No, Lisa said. That kind of bio device only sends the final signal when 2 conditions are met: pressurized cockpit and altitude above 30,000 feet, or about 9,100 meters. But they will use you as a priming device during takeoff, leaving the system no time to react. Beck opened the trunk, pulled out 2 forged security badges and a localized jamming unit. Getting in is one thing. Getting out, that's the hard part. Lisa checked her watch. 38 minutes. Let's go. The ground control center was packed, but Beck had planned for that. A maintenance conduit ran from Sector B to the radar coordination bay, where flight paths were verified for final clearance. Lisa and Max crawled through the dusty, heat-choked tunnel. She installed a fake fingerprint and iris scanner bypass at the secondary checkpoint, fooling the system into recognizing her as the lead flight engineer. 90 seconds later, they were inside the processing room. Screens flickered non-stop. FB-277's route was being verified in real time. Lisa plugged a USB disruptor into a side port. FB-277's data immediately started glitching. Within 15 seconds, the autopilot authentication for the cockpit, where Pierce would have to scan in, froze. Lisa opened a secure channel and whispered, "You have 7 clean minutes. Get to the cockpit by then." At Gate 9, Beck and Pierce raced across the tarmac in a maintenance vehicle. The Airbus FB-277 was fully fueled. The boarding stairs were being pulled back. A crew member stood at the entrance, eyes distant but hand resting on a small device hidden along the doorway frame. Beck muttered, "They have someone on board. I count at least 3 disguised security operatives." "Pierce, you only get 1 chance to reach that cockpit. If it does not work, run. I will handle the rest." Pierce said nothing, but his eyes gave the answer. The vehicle stopped. Beck tossed an ID badge up to the ramp agent. "Pressurization check order. Pilot reported unstable readings. Tech team inbound." The agent glanced at the badge, then nodded. "You've got 5 minutes. Crew is getting restless." Beck and Pierce climbed aboard. The cabin was tense. Air felt heavy. Passengers in the first row turned to look. One of them gave a subtle nod and touched a hidden earpiece. The kill command had been sent. 5 minutes left to stop a living bomb and to save 180 innocent lives. Pierce kept his hand on the control panel, sweat dripping down his temple. He turned to the captain. "The cockpit is sealed. If we take off now, this entire plane becomes a pressurized coffin." The captain's face went pale. "What are you talking about? I'm the replacement pilot, but I'm not a terrorist." I was planted as part of something called THETA-9, a biometric sensor device that detonates when the aircraft hits a specific altitude. Outside, Beck was in a gunfight with one of the assassins posing as airport security. Max charged in to help taking the man down before the final bullet could leave the chamber. Lisa, speaking from the control center, whispered through the earpiece, "THETA-9 is reactivating. Someone inside the airport's internal network just reconnected it to a secondary satellite server. Our kill switch is being overridden remotely." Pierce gritted his teeth. "Give me a secure channel to the data center. I'll log in and request an emergency shutdown of all sensor control arrays." "Not enough," Lisa replied. "Unless we find the original programmer of THETA-9, or someone who can access the root layer." At that moment, a voice crackled through the headset. "This is Harrow. I'm listening." Everyone froze. Lisa's eyes widened. "Harrow. You're alive. I've been isolated, but not eliminated. Melissa found me before they could finish the job. I helped design THETA-9 not as a weapon, but as a system to measure emotional thresholds in extreme environments. But it was modified." Harrow's breath was shaky. "Send me the current code string through channel B7. I can trigger a self-destruct protocol." Lisa typed the string and routed it through the encrypted channel. 17 seconds later, a message appeared on the command screen. "THETA-9 core rejected. Initiating dump sequence." Pierce looked at the clock. 40 seconds remained before the plane was cleared for takeoff. Beck burst into the cockpit, his voice tight. "Get that device off your wrist, now. It is deactivated, but it can still be reactivated." Pierce took out a small blade and sliced open the band that Lisa had resecured to maintain signal continuity. Beneath the skin, a small metal core sat its red light, now completely dark. Max stood guard in the corridor, ears twitching at every sound. Lisa's voice came through. "Now we know THETA-9 is not just a device. It is a tool for mass killing disguised under the name of safety technology." Harrow continued through the headset, and behind it is not just one organization. It is an underground ecosystem, a network of defense contractors, tech companies, and those who want to turn human lives into data points. A faint explosion echoed from the tech bay, where the hidden satellite relay had been housed. Melissa's voice came through the auxiliary channel. "I've shut down the uplink. From now on, only we can access the control architecture." Pierce leaned back in the cockpit chair, exhaling deeply. But his eyes stayed alert, already preparing for what would come next. Lisa spoke softly. "We cannot stop here, because if we know then, they know that we know, and they will not stay quiet." The story of THETA-9 was far from over. And inside that plane, as order slowly returned among hundreds of passengers, 4 people understood the next battle would not be in the skies. It would be on the ground against powers far greater than any of them had imagined. Beck sat quietly inside an emergency meeting room at a temporary military base where the team had been relocated after the successful mid-air intervention. On the table were satellite maps, airport schematics, flight logs, and most important, an illuminated 3D projection of THETA-9's core code. Lisa stood beside him, her eyes tired but steady. Pierce sat across, hands interlocked, staring straight ahead, still processing everything that had happened. Harrow entered with Melissa Kern. Though he bore minor injuries, his gaze was sharp, the look of a scientist who had seen his creation turned into a murder weapon. "I've confirmed it," Harrow began. THETA-9 was actually a sub-branch of Project Nexus, officially shut down after the Vilnius disaster in 2022. But it did not disappear. It was quietly transferred to proxy firms, and they altered it for integration into commercial tech like biometric wristbands. Melissa added, they were not just testing biological behavior control. They were setting the stage to legalize behavioral optimization under the banner of security. All it would take is one well-executed incident, a terror attack, to justify widespread deployment. Lisa pointed at the map where glowing red dots were beginning to emerge. We traced the satellite backup IP. From there, we found 7 data coordination centers scattered from California to Poland, each one hidden behind defense tech firms, research institutions, even charity organizations. Pierce spoke up. If I had died that day, the story would have been a pilot radicalized by exposure to tech. The public would panic. Laws on biometric surveillance would be passed overnight. Beck clenched his jaw, and millions would wear THETA 9-like devices without ever knowing. A biological bomb disguised as a health monitor. Harrow placed a drive on the table. This is the evidence, but no one will listen to a scientist like me unless you have a story powerful enough to shake the system. You already have that. But to end this, we need more. We need exposure. We need to make it impossible for them to bury this. Lisa looked at Beck, then at Pierce. I'm done hiding. I'm going public. The world needs to know. Max let out a soft growl as if in agreement. The first move was made. No more staying underground. They initiated a decentralized data leak, not through mainstream media, but via encrypted peer-to-peer nodes, operated by hundreds of tech volunteers. Within 72 hours, the THETA 9 files had spread globally. Some were blocked, but others lit up across forums, expert networks, and even hacker communities. Meanwhile, inside the headquarters of a powerful tech conglomerate in Zurich, shadowy figures gathered in a private boardroom. One silver-haired man, his ID badge labeled only with Director, stared at the projection on the screen. THETA 9 leaked. His fist clenched. Activate Phase 2. If we cannot control the narrative, we will control those who tell it. The war was not over, but from now on, it would not stay in the shadows. 3 days later, at a security data facility overseen by the Independent Tech Alliance, Lisa, Beck, Pierce, and Max sat before an emergency hearing. Harrow and Melissa were brought in from a protected location. All evidence related to THETA 9, from programming code and manufacturing documents to data logs about the manipulated pilot schedule, was presented to the International Committee. One council member asked Lisa, "What do you believe is the greatest threat right now?" Lisa responded, "Not the device itself, but the mindset behind it. When people start believing they can program life and death, then any technology can be turned into a tool for mass killing." Pierce added, "I am living proof of that. I thought I was just flying a plane, but I was actually the weapon no one saw coming." Beck spoke next. "And if we do not expose the full truth, there will be hundreds more Pierces out there, and we will not even know." A heavy silence filled the room. Then, the head of the council spoke. "We will escalate this to the Federal Technology Court and issue an emergency suspension on all products tied to THETA 9. Melissa held Harrow's hand, 2 people who had seen how innovation could be corrupted into something monstrous. In their eyes now a flicker of fragile hope. That night, as the group left the data facility, Max barked twice this time, not as a warning, but as a signal of peace. Lisa looked up at the sky. "This time we saved 180 lives. But the ones behind this, they are still free." Beck clenched his fist. "Then we keep going, because the truth never ends with just one headline." And so, from the cockpit to the corridors of politics, from laboratories to secret courtrooms, the story of THETA 9 continued to spread as a stark warning: technology without conscience will not serve us. It will rule us. Now, you watching this video, what do you think? Have you ever believed that being honest means you will not be used? that technology exists to serve humans and could never betray us, or that a dog who barks and wags its tail could never be the one to save an entire aircraft heading toward disaster. The story of Max, of Lisa, and of those who dared to challenge an invisible system proves that justice does not always come with noise. Sometimes it just needs people brave enough to stand up when everything feels too late. They are not superheroes. They have no capes, no advanced gadgets, and no political influence. They had just one thing: the courage to act when the truth was twisted. And that was enough to save not just 180 lives, but to spark awareness for millions more, showing the hidden power behind lines of code. It is a reminder that media is not just a tool. It is a battlefield. Every story told, every bit of information shared can save a life or destroy hundreds. And in an age where data is worth more than ethics, the truth needs guardians. Not everyone has the courage to speak up for what is right, but if enough people do, the darkness will have nowhere left to hide. This story reminds us evil does not need to be loud. It just needs good people to stay silent. And sometimes a dog like Max, who cannot speak, cannot code, can still do what many humans chose: not to stay loyal to what is right. If you found this video meaningful, leave a comment below. Tell us what part of the story shook you the most. Who do you think was the bravest? Do you believe Max understood what was happening? Do not forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you will not miss what comes next, because some truths only become clear when we tell the story.